I think we're conditioned from a young age to look at outside things to achieve, to conquer mountains, businesses, careers, grades, whatever, with the kind of unwritten promise of society that the more you succeed on the outside, whatever that may look like, the more it will translate on the inside into more fulfillment, alignment, freedom, opportunity, etc.
So, Jonathan, fabulous to have you here. I've read up quite a bit about you, and you have a fascinating backstory, and you've got this empowerment, which is interesting to dig into a bit, with this inside out mythology, which is very fascinating. And your book, The Tree and the Mountain, it's a fictional story, but obviously with a non-fiction kind of slant to it. So for business people to basically get grounded. And what's really interesting is how can somebody who's kind of seemed to have achieved everything be able to ground themselves and find themselves again having sort of been lost, feeling empty and disconnected, which is, what you specialize in. And kind of, I guess, in your story, how you found your way back. So just give the listeners a 45-minute kind of backstory of yourself, sort of a movie trailer.
With pleasure. Thank you. Great to be here with you, David, first of all. Thank you very much. So, New Zealander, decided to study law, became a successful lawyer, completely dedicated to work and high performance in my field, rose the ranks quickly, became partner, was offered to become senior partner. So it all looked rosy on the surface, but behind the scenes, internally disconnected, misaligned, health problems, not very good relationships with my kids, 50-50 with my wife. So the external metrics were all green. The internal metrics of success, joy, alignment, peace of mind were red. And I made the choice when I was offered to take over the senior partnership of the firm to say no to what was a slam dunk and to discover how I had gotten to the state of external success and internal misalignment.
I think this is a common problem that I've come across is work-life balance. And one of the things that I do know is you pretty much can't have a continual work-life balance. There are periods where you've got to focus on work more and periods where you need to focus on family more. And I think it's that organization of time to make sure that you actually set aside the time. So I traveled the tour for, over 30 years, and that meant traveling, 25 to 30 weeks a year. And I've been married a long time. And one of the things that really helped with that is I always put in the diary things to look forward to, weekends away or holiday or, a tournament that the family were going to come with me. So there's always something to look forward to. And in those periods, I needed to make sure that I was very present. And also the periods when I was at home to try and be as present as possible. But it was setting aside those distinct periods that everybody knew, we're going to go on holiday and we're going to have a weekend away then, we're going to do this then, and kind of make those sacrosanct unless something phenomenal happened. So that's how I dealt with it. But I'm very interested to see in your journey where you are now in terms of managing it.
Thank you. And thank you for sharing your example as well. So I don't look at the world, or at least my time, as work-life balance anymore. I used to, but I've challenged myself to go beyond the words to what actually is work-life balance. And I've realized that actually it's balance as the umbrella, with work 1/3, non-work 1/3, and sleep 1/3. So the work-life balance kind of equation is faulty, I discovered, because what it means is that more work equals less life, or more life equals less work, and being on that sweet spot is probably 2 seconds a day. So it's an impossible challenge we set ourselves. So now I resonate in terms of balance. I'm chasing balance. And it's about having these thirds, which obviously can vary. Sometimes it's a 10-hour workday and a little less time for yourself. But that's the first thing I'd say, is that I'm chasing balance, not work-life balance. And the second thing is when you mentioned about looking forward and anticipating and having these great weekends and or holidays and time with family where you would be in full presence. The last 10 years of my journey have been trying to be in full presence, whether I'm working with clients or whether I'm with family or whether I'm with myself. To be in this full present mode, which is, I've learned, the greatest gift you can give to another person is making them feel like they're the only person in the world at that particular moment.
Yes.
And so I don't know if that resonates with you, but that's what I strive to do today.
Yes, I mean, it resonates greatly because in coaching mindset online a lot, I know it's very important to prepare for a session to actually be fully present. I also have, everybody knows Pareto's 80-20 rule. If I get it right 80% of the time, I'm pretty happy because 20% we're human and we can drift or something distracts us or whatever. But yes, I think, yeah, sometimes life almost seems a little bit like a dream. And, I sometimes catch myself saying, come on, really try and savor this moment.
Mm.
Really try and savor it. And it's interesting because everybody's experience of the world is so different. I just wonder if people savor moments in a different way to how I savor moments, because we will never know. It's a conundrum for me. It's like, am I
Mm.
really savoring this moment the way it needs to be savored? And there's no answer to that. But yes, I do like the ideas like just chase balance, but I still think it comes down to the fact that there are periods where you have to focus on work and periods where you have to focus on family, and you can't do every day one third, one third, one third,
Mm. Mm. Yeah.
because that's just, yeah, life
Yeah.
doesn't work like that. It's a lot messier than that.
Yeah.
you know, Going into a different area now, as a lawyer, you spent, 15 years with some of the world's wealthiest, entrepreneurs and wealth management and advisory roles with that level of achiever and wealth. And, the families, in your having their next gen issues and stuff like that. How did you personally handle the pressure of operating with these people where the stakes and scrutiny must have been constantly very, very high?
Yeah, so two ways. One is I felt the pressure because I didn't have the toolkit or the mindset to be able to deliver sustainable long-term performance. I did it professionally, but I was paying in terms of my health and my family. That's why I don't think it's sustainable long-term performance, even though my clients would probably say, we didn't see anything and you delivered great service, Jonathan. But holistically, it wasn't sustainable. It wasn't long-term. And I wish I knew back then what I knew now. The second thing is that sitting at the table advising these entrepreneurs, who some of whom have created empires, I noticed they have two characteristics, and you might recognize this in the elite sports people that you coach. Is number one is they've learned to fully leverage their talents. So you don't imagine these people doing anything else than what they're doing because they're in their natural state, and that acts as a magnet to opportunity, investment, talented people, etc. So that's number one. And number two is they learn to be comfortable in the uncomfortable, meaning they're always just outside of their comfort zone, testing themselves and their business and their empires. And that gives them a competitive advantage because they're just outside the comfort zone. So when other people are destabilized or it's a bit scary, they're in their element because they've trained the muscle of being comfortable in the uncomfortable. And it's that combination, leveraging talents and learning to be comfortable in the uncomfortable, which is my conclusion after 15 years of observing these top entrepreneurs succeed.
I mean, it's so interesting you say that because I always, in working with high performers, say this is that in my experience, the best performers get their confidence from the fact that they know that they can deal with adversity.
Mm.
And they know that what kind of anything that is thrown at them, they will be able to deal with.
Mm.
And I think that gives them more confidence than just being good at what they do, is that it would have to be an enormous amount of pressure and very, very out there before you could destabilize my ability to deal with adversity.
Yeah.
So that's why they can come back from, huge deficits and, always kind of believe that no matter how small a chance is, go for that chance because you can still maybe win.
Yeah.
If you stay engaged and looking for a way to get through whatever problem it is.
I'm completely with you on that, and I've seen it a lot. I've also seen something else which is sitting next to this, which is a lot of high performers that I've had the great fortune of coaching have low inner confidence or the imposter syndrome at a very deep level inside them. And these are people who, have created and famous and well known and by all external metrics have succeeded. And I kept on hearing, Jonathan, I've got the imposter syndrome, or I feel like a fraud, or I've got low inner confidence, until I realized that it's the low inner confidence at a very deep level that is the driver of their success. Because this type of person gets up every morning and as if they've got nothing, even though they might have everything, saying, I need to start over again today. I need to prove my worth, that I am deserving. And so this is the type of person that often you need to hold back a little bit because they've got their own internal engine rather than pushing and motivating them. They've got their own motivational system. And every day getting up with that same attitude of having to start again, start over, creates amazing careers and amazing businesses. But you would never imagine on the surface that these people lack inner confidence because they're showing the reverse. I
Yes.
don't know what you think about that, but I find it fascinating.
Yeah, I also think the metrics by which they measure themselves alters. They may be trying to, you know, launch SpaceX with an IPO because the margins are very small in high level achievement, especially in sport. By its nature, it's insecure because you can never be sure of the outcome because you're competing against the best in the world. So it breeds insecurity. But I think they don't feel always that confident at that level. But if you ask them to, play at a much lower level, A, it wouldn't stimulate them, but B, they would be very confident.
Yeah.
So I think as they achieve more and more, their metrics change and they're always measuring themselves against the very best or what the next step is, which gets bigger and bigger and bigger. But I think it's also what stimulates them is that challenge and that the adrenaline and the fact that can I pull this off because they're striving for such high goals.
Yeah, I think that's the moment we feel the most alive, when we're really testing the limits of our potential in a sport with rules, maybe with an audience watching, with all that energy concentrated on the court or the field or whatever sport it
Yeah.
is. I think it's a buzz for the audience, it's a buzz for the athlete, and the script is not written.
Yeah.
And by coming back to by being in full presence in that moment, which is the only thing I can control from my side of the court. I don't control the other side or the wind or the rain or whatever. But to say, right, this is where all I can do is bring the best and see whether it wins me the game or loses me a game. It doesn't matter. Well, it does matter, but if you can walk off the court saying, well, I couldn't have done more, then
Mm.
and that's you.
But I think business is no different because I mean, putting together an unbelievable deal or whatever, it's going to have its nerve-wracking moments, and is it going to happen? Isn't going to happen? I think sport, the buzz is so concentrated in such a short space of time that is very difficult to ever replicate. Which is why some sportsmen really struggle to retire because that unbelievable adrenaline buzz and unbelievable overcoming of nerves and everything is very, very hard to find, and also with a huge audience. But I mean, a lot of ex-sportsmen become very successful in business because they do understand risk-taking, they do understand, having to go through discomfort, and they do understand that you're not always going to win, but you have to go for it.
Yeah. and they end up winning more often than they lose, and that's the name of the game.
Do you think many of the high performers you've worked with are climbing the wrong mountain, or do they
Um,
simply expect the mountain they're climbing to give them something that it never can?
yeah, great question. Love it. And the answer is yes. I think we're conditioned from a young age to look at outside things to achieve, to conquer mountains, businesses, careers, grades, whatever, with the kind of unwritten promise of society that the more you succeed on the outside, whatever that may look like, the more it will translate on the inside into more fulfillment, alignment, freedom, opportunity, etc. And to a certain extent, it does, right? You get a good job or you perform highly. That does have an impact on yourself. But there comes a point where the marginal gain in terms of outside success is no longer translating into internal feeling. But that's all we were shown. That's all we were taught. So people carry on going, well, after this next mountain, after this next million or billion, I'll be satisfied, I'll be aligned, I'll be at peace. And it never comes. And that's probably why I end up meeting them, because they realize without having the answers, my system is faulty for what is my ultimate aim, which is to be at peace with myself and have a really good relationship with myself and others. And so when they tell me their beautiful business successes, I say, thank you for the context, but we're not going to be talking about any of that because you don't need my help in terms of business success. You've done it. But how's your relationship with yourself? Are you enjoying your success? How's your relationship with your kids and your family and your friends and your passions? How are you living your passions? And there they go, no, that's not, that's very low. And I've paid the price of this because of the business success or the excess business success. So I say, right, well, I'm going to help you go to the other side of the coin, which is to build a fantastic relationship with yourself and with your inner child, because it's he or she who's the one that needs a bit of taking care of. And they go, okay, this sounds interesting. I realize I'm a novice in this side of the coin. Let's go. And that's how it starts. The
Yeah.
irony, if I may, is that by focusing on the other side of the coin, which is this inside, it breaks the glass ceilings on the outside success. So, and that's when they really sort of fall on the floor saying, I never thought that I was going to be able to go even higher and bigger and more impact by ignoring the business side and focusing on myself. And I say, bingo, you got it.
That's very interesting. I think intrinsically we all kind of know this, but it's a lot more difficult implementing than just knowing it because you have to take actions that say I'm changing what I'm focusing on. And how do you help people, or what's their sort of starting point that you advise to actually start to get to know themselves better?
Yeah. The very first time I meet someone, I actually help them identify what I call as our central alignment line, which is a virtual axis going through us, which is a high energy, high performing, authentic self. And this is when we're in a state of flow, confident, free, capable of anything. That's how we feel. And to identify the central alignment line, I help people identify their three core values that anchor them, their three greatest talents that help them to fly, and their three deepest aspirations, which give them a direction to fly to. So the first session is basically I help them answer the question, who am I really? Beyond everything on the surface, marital status, income, recognition, state, etc. Who are you really? Let's go into your values, talents, and foundation and aspirations, which make up the central alignment line. Because if I say to you, David, if you're living your values on a daily basis, if you're expressing and leveraging your talents in everything you do, and if you're progressing towards what you want most, your deepest aspirations, do you think you'll be high energy or low energy?
Yeah, high energy.
you know?
I think a lot of people would be able to identify their talents, but I think where some might struggle is what their highest aspirations are.
Mm.
Because it's deeper than just saying, oh, I want to earn X amount or achieve something outside a game. How do you help them find their inner aspiration?
Questions. Yeah, I ask them three questions. I do it practically by taking them down into the heart, okay, through breathing and closing eyes, hands on heart, and I sort of guide them down to -50, -100. And I get them to ask their heart, because the mind wants to answer everything. So you got to get out of the mind for this. I get them to ask their heart three questions. Number one is, who do you want to be more than anything in the world? But in one or two words only. All right. I want to be free. I want to be confident. I want to be myself. I want to be a great dad. Right. But there's a lot of things we want to be, but just one thing. Second question, what do you want to do more than anything else in the world? Again, there's a million things you and I want to do, but what's at the top of the list if you had Aladdin's lamp and there's one wish left? I want to travel. I want to, voila, doing. That's the second one. And the third one is, what do I want to have that would make such a difference in my life? And people share things like, I want to have time. I want to have opportunity. I want to have a loving family. It can be anything. But again, one thing. So when I ask aspirations, who do you want to be? What do you want to do? What do you want to have? In one or two words only. And they're the existential questions of life. And I take them down for about 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes. It's not too long, because if it was longer, the mind would come in and say, I want to answer. So, and what emerges is usually some very deep stuff that they didn't even realize. I could share mine if you want.
Yeah, I think that would be very helpful for people.
So my three aspirations are to go with the flow. That's the first one. The second one is to love and accept myself as I am. And my third aspiration is to know that it's safe to be me. And behind that is, I used to play so many roles because it was unsafe for me to be myself. We're at minus 150 meters here, but it's been one of the revelations. It was unsafe to be me.
Very interesting. I know you had a pretty tough childhood, safe to say.
Not super tough. I had divorced parents, but moved 5 countries before the age of 18. But overall, I think I was okay. I was more on the fortunate side.
Okay, because there's a lot of research that says that people who've suffered some kind of trauma, and that sometimes be self-induced as well, tend to be very high achievers. And my theory about that is that if you've been through some really tough stuff, you know that whatever you're having to deal with in business or sport or whatever is not nearly as tough as what you've had to deal with. So you have that inner reserve that says, you know what, as tough as this is, it's not actually that tough.
Mm.
And I think that's what gives them that, again, confidence that they can deal with huge amount of adversity. Yeah, I mean, I think where I'm coming to is that, do you think high achievers now, when, in the work that you do now, are getting more conscious of having to, dig a little deeper and find these answers, whereas before was more just purely about that outside success, and as long as you can show that, you just cope with all the rest?
It's a great question. And I think it's reflective of the evolution of human beings. We were chasing, general population, outside success, and we are willing to sacrifice time with family, maybe health, and other things for the benefit of helping the family progress financially, so kids can have opportunities, school, university. So if I think of my grandparents and maybe even my parents, sacrifice was part of the equation. You succeed and you sacrifice and suck it up and carry on, and life is tough. I think my generation, and I see it also now with my kids who are still young, but we're challenging the sacrifice bit, where okay, I'm willing to work hard, I'm willing to have and generate success, but I want to feel the success and I want to live my passions and I want to be aligned. Does it have to be at the price of my relationships and the price of my health? And they're saying, well, no, I don't accept that anymore. I saw my parents go through it and all the sacrifices they made. Is there another way? And so I think they're drawn to the inside, which is not taught in school. You never had an exam on David at school. I never had an exam on Jonathan. We were taught outside subjects,
Yeah.
math, science, etc. And so they are drawn to this inner world of how can I have external success and internal success that I feel.
I think that leads neatly into my next question, which is what part of your identity had to die for you to be able to write The Tree and the Mountain?
Hmm. Well, it's great questions, David. The part of me who would worry about what other people would think, that had to die, because the whole point of writing a book and being very vulnerable, and it's fictional but it's inspired by my story, and I share my deepest fears, I share my demons in a sense through the characters, and sharing that with the world, who is then invited to like, dislike, etc., meant that I had to no longer have the external world as my reference point and have myself as my reference point, my alignment, my recognition of self, not that of others.
Which comes back to your thing about finding that place where you had was safe to be yourself.
Yeah,
That book was a process to become safe with being yourself.
that's it. And it's being able to go to the world and say that in the art form that is books that people can read and have read. And so I've gotten rid of a layering which was protective, but actually not helping me go to
Yeah,
the next
Brené
level.
Brown talks about getting rid of the armor.
Yeah, that's it.
What have you figured out that maybe most ambitious people miss about success in terms of getting maybe more fulfillment and meaning from their success?
Two things. One is that the most important relationship they will ever have is the one with themselves, because it's permanent, constant until the end of our lives. And number two, that inner peace is priceless. And
I like that.
no money can buy inner peace.
Yeah.
You have to figure it out for yourself. What is going to bring me to inner peace?
In your experience, a lot of people, think, well, if I make a lot of money, then I'll be happier, and and then if I make more, I'll be happier, which we spoke about earlier. But studies show that you have people in abject poverty that are happy, and people in abject poverty that are unhappy, and at every level of society. If somebody does not have inner peace, they're never going to have inner peace, no matter how much money they make
Hmm.
or how successful they are. I suppose my question is, can you blow it? In other words, if people have maybe, I don't know, acted unethically or whatever, and got to a place where it's a real mess, they have a lot of identity to drop or whatever if they're going to find inner peace. Is there a way back for people that have really kind of done some harsh things, cruel things, that
Yeah.
in order to do whatever, and they suddenly realize that they have no inner peace and would actually like to
Hmm.
find a way?
I think I like to believe there's always a way to inner peace, regardless of what you've done or what's been done to you. Now, that can be challenged, of course, with ultimate trauma, which we carry with us. But here's the thing, we know what we've done and haven't done. It's very difficult to lie to yourself. And money, coming back to that, can kind of blanket the reality which we may or may not want to face. But it will never get rid of the importance of knowing what you know, and that relationship with yourself. So, how to get to inner peace comes through what we tend to do for others, but not for ourselves. Let me explain. We tend to forgive others, but we tend to be unforgiving of ourselves. We tend to truly love others, but we don't love ourselves with that same unconditional love. We condition our loves on performance and things like that. We trust others, but a lot of us don't tend to trust ourselves. So we have the capacity to love, to trust others. So the skill is there. But for some reason, a lot of us haven't learned or accepted to apply that same standard and the same behaviors to ourselves. So the road to inner peace for me is learning to give ourselves all the things that we didn't have as children or that we wished we have. And now as adults, we have the power to give it to ourselves.
Good answer. I think what underlies this all is it's not as easy as we think, but I think it's also not as difficult as we may think.
Correct.
You just got to start, get going. And
I've got an example, if you want, of how to start in a very simple way. Sorry to interrupt you there. Would you like me to share it? I mean, a very simple thing that any of us can do is when we wake up in the morning, whether through an alarm clock or through natural waking up, we're in this kind of semi-conscious state for the first, let's say, 5 seconds as we transition from the unconscious to the conscious. And to have the reflex to ask your heart to answer the following question while you're still in bed, you're still in your pajamas, you haven't gotten your coffee yet, you're still kind of eyes semi-closed. Who do I want to be today? Who do I want to be today? And the important word there is being. We're going to spend the entire day doing, which is its own form of energy. But by starting your day with who do I want to be today and asking your heart to reveal that, and it can be, I want to be free, I want to be myself, I want to be a great tennis player, I want to be a super coach, it can be anything. You're doing 2 things. One, you're acknowledging that you're here for another day, which was not guaranteed when you went to bed the night before. It wasn't. And the second thing is you're starting your energy, your day, with a being energy. Now, a being energy is very strong. And when it sits alongside the doing energy of the 75 things you're going to do during the day, they feed each other. And you'll find out that during the day, if you said, I want to be a good dad today, well, you're going to think about that at like 2 o'clock or at 6. It's going to keep on coming back and boost you because it's another form of energy of this is an opportunity for me to be something today. So anyone can do it.
I love that. I think it's an easy thing to do as well. Very, very easy. Great. Well, I mean, this has been absolutely fascinating. Who should I have on this podcast that you've met that you think would be a great fit next?
There's a gentleman called Ravi Chowdhury, who is ex-chairman of Tata Group companies in India.
Yeah.
Who's the wisest, most inspirational person I have ever met. I'm very privileged to call him a dear friend, and he is someone exceptional who I think you should have a conversation with.
And you're happy to make that introduction?
I'm very happy to make that introduction.
Well, I really appreciate it. This has been a fascinating conversation, and I really do feel your genuine energy. It's great. So next, we're going to flip the mic, and it's your chance to ask me a couple of questions. So I look forward to that.
Fantastic.
Thanks for watching Locker Room Power with David Sammel. If you enjoyed the episode, hit subscribe and leave a comment on your favorite platform. See you in the next one.